going live, so we're still waiting
Almost
for it to
there.
go live, and now we're live.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm still struggling with the new YouTube setup. It's stupid. It's just plain damn stupid. But I see there's somebody watching. Okay, there's 2 concurrent viewers. Hey, all right. Let's talk about something. Speaking of stupid, I was just talking about how stupid the new YouTube setup is, and it's a pain in my ass, and it makes me recopy the fucking thing. But you know what else is stupid? Well, let's talk about what else is stupid. Let's send everybody a check for $1,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
man.
First, let me answer your most probable defense. Bush did it. Shit up your noses. Bush ran into a surplus and said, "It's their money." Now, this is a very rare occurrence. You're not going to run into this very often. You've just heard me defend W. I didn't like W because he was a Democrat and he tried to pretend not to be. But and I won't defend his sending out the checks. Um Now please believe I spent mine on beer, but what was I going to do? Mail it back to the government? Where would I send it? So it's one thing to stand against it in principle, but as a practical matter, what do you do?
You go buy your new TV and pay your rent.
Yeah.
Or if you're young, 20 something male, you're in the army, you go buy Guinness.
Oh no, we bought. I mean, please believe I love me a Guinness, but we went and bought some weird high end micro brew craft. I mean, we were in Monterey, California at the time, brother. We bought some of that crazy hippie beer. There's probably weed in it
Yeah, because,
because it's California. How do you know?
well, and there's the whole thing. They've done experiments where they've uh, they've given people cash and they've given people debit cards and they've given people credit cards and they've told you that the money represents certain things over the course of these experiments. And people are always the most careful with their own money. If it's a literal wad of cash in their pocket, it's very tangible. They understand when they've got a lot, they
Yep.
understand as it starts to run low, and they're more and more careful with it. I think, excuse me, not to go into like full blown Ron Paul territory, but man, the that whole debit card thing worked out great for the banks because they get a few cents on every transaction, and you're slightly more likely to overdraft your account because, man, all you got to do is just be living paycheck to paycheck and forget about a swipe somewhere, and then the bank gets to make another $35 off of you.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah, this is a terrible idea. I've I've had relatively few complaints about Trump. Almost everything that he's done, I've either felt like was a win, or I'm just mostly neutral about could justify why certain things happen because politics is the art of the possible, not the art of the ideal. If libertarians would ever figure that out, they might actually take over the entire political system in the country. But the bump stock ban I thought was a terrible idea, uh,
Yes.
and Chris has made the point on the show that part of why the bump stock ban was such a terrible idea is in the future people are going to make the argument, hey, conservatives love Trump, Republicans love Trump, and even Trump was on board with teeny tiny bits of reasonable gun control, so how come you can't get on board with little teeny tiny bits of reasonable gun control?
Oh, and just real quick, let me answer that question. There is not such a thing as reasonable gun control. A reasonable gun control law does not exist, cannot exist. There are no reasonable gun control laws because in absolutely every case, the implementation of a gun control law is the is the usurpation of violence monopoly by the government. And the more the government is allowed to usurp the monopoly on violence, on the use of force, the more authoritarian it becomes. That is not a philosophical claim. That is an immutable fact. It is definitional.
Wait, so you're saying you feel like people should be allowed to own machine guns?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, duh. I mean, especially when these kind of controls come from the federal government. It just, no. There's a reason why they're not allowed to infringe on the Second Amendment. But putting aside that rabbit hole, I actually think Trump is about to make the single worst mistake of his presidency. I think philosophically, the gun control thing bothers me more, but practically, I think this right here, where we're just going to send everybody a check, man, absolute worst mistake. And it is one that is going to come back to bite us and come back to bite us for the exact same reason. Because it's, well, it's basically, how you say, communism. And I don't use that word lightly, but I mean, when we're just going to equally distribute everything to everybody, well, hey, that's one of the end goals of communism, people.
Well, okay, so this is a little different than that. God,
Only a little.
This is kind of a devil's advocate, argument, and kind of a legitimate argument, but there's a big damn difference between, hey, there's a national emergency, go buy you some food, and you know what would really fix this country is if we just sent everybody $1,000 a month. There's a big damn difference there. Now, as far as stimulating the economy, well, we saw what happened with the Bush plan. He sent everybody a check, and there was not a real measurable difference in the economy. There wasn't like a sudden poof. Because the plan with the Bush move was actually they wanted people to do what me and my irresponsible shithead soldier buddies did. Go out and buy shit you don't need. Spend money in retail. By a large margin, what people did is they paid their bills. They spent it on things that they were going to spend it on anyway, in places where they may have had some shortfalls. And so it didn't go back directly into the retail sphere in the way that it was expected or intended to. This, I think, stands a better chance of being used for the thing that it's intended to be used for, because it's a grant going to, by a wide margin, people who are suddenly trying to make ends meet and figure out, okay, I'm not working for 2 weeks or a month, and I do still have to pay the rent, and I do still have to buy groceries. So I think there's a better chance for this move to have the intended effect, but I don't think that I still don't think it's going to have the intended effect, because there's several factors here, one of which is $1,000 just isn't a lot of damn money. It'll help. You know, for a lot of people, it'll help when they just suddenly have $1,000 in their pocket. But this is not life-changing money that goes to them. And guys, at the end of the month, if you've got, if you're somebody who is living paycheck to paycheck, and at the end of the month you've got $100 left in the checking account, and you've got a $200 credit card bill due that you don't have enough money for, you're going to go spend that money on groceries. So, this money's going to end up going to pay bills. Like I said, I think it has a better chance at having the desired effect than the Bush give back did. But it's also true, it also bears repeating that with the Bush move, it was, we have this surplus. What do we do with it? Well, it's their money. Let's give it back to them. But let's not forget that was also touted as being this whole plan to, oh, it's gonna boost the economy. It's gonna just insert some life into the retail stores.
No, the thing that boosted the economy during the Bush years is basically the same thing that boosted the economy for the first few years of Trump, and flattened out the tax code, and didn't just flatten it out, made it easier to comply with. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't talk about. Nobody wants to pay their lawyer $100,000 to save them $250,000 in taxes. But if you present them with those two options, they're going to spend $100,000 on the lawyer every time, because, folks inherently ain't dumb when it comes to their own money. But this is the opposite. This is Keynesian bullshit. And part of what I really, really, really worry about is a couple of things. One, okay, fine. What if this lasts for longer than 2 or 3, 4 weeks? What, do we just all get checks again in April so that we can pay our rent in May? Do we all just get checks again in May so we can pay our rent in June? And what about for the people where this is not enough? What about people that were, up until a few days ago, making above the national average in income? $1,000 a month doesn't cover their expenses. Some people have got $1,000 a month alone just in car payments and the associated insurance costs with having car payments. And I have personally started to feel the pinch. I very, very typically at my job work between 35 and 45 hours a week, and I get paid by the hour, and it's very important that I get those hours. Over the past 2 days, I've worked about 8 hours because people, I think, are terrified to ask for pest control, and I can even understand where they're coming from. I could potentially spread the disease to dozens of people in a week without even being aware of the fact that I'm doing it, with the incubation period and the fact that it can be asymptomatic even in adults and all that kind of stuff. But there's another thing, and it's something that we touched on yesterday, and it's that at its base, this sort of thing doesn't work long term. In fact, long term, what this sort of thing does is prolong the problem. I am going to read a quote. This comes from Henry Morgenthau Jr. This was FDR's Treasury Secretary, by the way. He wrote this 8 years in and was a big believer in FDR's ideas in the beginning. Henry Morgenthau Jr. wrote in his private diary that we have tried spending money. We are spending more money than we have ever spent before, and it does not work. We have never made good on our promises. I say after 8 years of this administration, we have just as much unemployment as when we started, and now an enormous debt to boot. The Great Depression lasted as long as it did because of that right there, because they kept spending money. You can throw money at a problem, but if you're hungry, you can't eat money. You can eat rice. Now, I can give you money, and theoretically you could go buy rice, but that has a tendency to not be how these things work out.
Right, and we've seen over and over again, you can't just hand a pile of money to poor people and suddenly they're not poor. It doesn't work that way. They're not poor because they don't have money. They don't have money because they're poor. But they're poor because they made poor choices.
Yes, that is what happens with a lot of impoverished people. One of the things Peterson talks about a lot is that he had a client where money was not the problem, where a lack of money was not the problem. In fact, having money was the problem. That this guy would get a disability check on the first of every month, and he would blow through it in somewhere to 3 to 4 to 5 days, just drinking and doing cocaine, drinking and doing cocaine. And whenever this guy got a big pile of money, even though he knew better, it was still what he went and did with it. So giving people a big pile of money, man, please believe cigarette companies and liquor stores are all going, that weed dealer that lives on the end of your block, he's stocking up because he knows what's coming. Oh
Yep.
God, yeah, he knows what's coming. So we could be taking something that would have caused a recession, and we are now flirting with turning it into a depression because, I got to tell you, I know better. I made this point yesterday. I'll make it again. I know better, but man, that $2,000 that we're going to get between my wife and I, God, that's awfully tempting. I mean, that is awfully tempting. And here's the reality of the situation, and this is never going to be part of the package because the political optics on it would be terrible. But if we were going to do this and we were going to attempt some measure of fiscal responsibility as we did it, this would get added to our tax burden at the end of the year. This $1,000 that everybody receives would come off the top because you got to balance the books somewhere. Otherwise, we're basically about to spend $1 trillion to add $1 trillion worth of inflation to the economy. So when you get your money, if you're planning on buying bullshit with it, you better hurry up and buy your bullshit, because I wouldn't be surprised if prices on certain things that have been falling for years, like flat screen TVs, I wouldn't be surprised if they tick up ever so slightly because, well, we all know everybody's got the money in their pocket. Yeah, we could sell this TV for $450 and make a healthy profit, but to hell with them. We're going to sell it for $500 because we know they've got the money. And
Well, no. There's another thing you're going to see, and this will counteract that. People are not going out and buying and shopping and doing the retail thing right now. So the other thing that you have to consider that's going to have an effect on that, storing product is expensive. It costs money to have those items on the shelf, even non-perishable items. Just keeping them in stock costs money. So you are actually going to see, in order to try and grasp at cash flow, you'll actually see some prices go down there because things need to move off the shelf so new things can move in. If things aren't moving onto the shelf and back off, then there's a cash flow problem. And cash flow is the most important thing in a business. Without cash flow, all you have is expenses.
yes, to a certain extent, you are correct. I sold cars for a while, and if a car sat on the lot, I forget exactly, it was something like 60 days, 70 days. The owners just tried to get rid of it. They would take a loss on the car just to get it off the lot because once it hit that 60-day, 70-day mark, they were losing money anyway because they couldn't put another car. Like I worked for a smaller dealership. We could only hold like 88 cars at a time, something to that effect. So, once they started losing money on that car, they had to get rid of it because, there's only 88 spots on the lot. And so, to a certain extent, you are correct. But I don't think you can ignore the overall impact of what printing $1 trillion is going to do. I mean, God, man, this is going to be such a nightmare. This is going to come back around and go, well, how come we can't forgive student loan debt? We just gave everybody $1,000. I mean, I hate to say it, man, but yeah, especially after having sat here and talked with you about it for about 20 minutes. I think this is the absolute most disappointed in Donald Trump I have been, bar none. So yeah, how's that for your black pill this morning?
Yeah, I'm almost there with you. I still maintain I was more disappointed with the bump stock ban because it represents it represents a dramatic erosion of civil liberties and constitutional rights. This represents a poor fiscal choice. Um, I think an erosion of actual freedom is a much more dangerous move than just fucking up the checkbook again.
How free are you if you don't possess the ability to provide for yourself, though? Because
I have
that's what real freedom is.
I have a rifle. I can provide for myself.
Okay, Mad Max.
I, I mean, it's one thing to say I can't afford a chicken. It's quite another thing to say I can't go kill one.
Yeah, the problem with that is sometimes when things get real bad, you don't go kill the chicken. You kill your neighbor and take his chicken.
Which is also done with my rifle.
Yes.
Just
Which
saying.
is which is great for everybody except your neighbor.
I mean, I
Well,
well,
and the chicken.
just as a matter of perspective, in the event of an apocalypse, if you don't own a firearm, you're just collecting supplies for someone that does. And he looks like this.
Oh yeah, no, I own multiple firearms. I've
Yeah.
got enough to where basically everybody 13 and up in my household could have a rifle. So, but still, that's man, that's all I got. Like I am legitimately bummed out by this. This is something we are going to have thrown in our faces for the rest of our lives. And just like it is taught in our history books that FDR saved us from the Depression, this event will be lied about in our history books to advance the left's agenda. And we hates it. It's false.
Yeah. All right, brother. That's all I've got, too. So y'all be safe out there. It's time to go to work. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
That was a dark show.
Yeah. Wasn't bad, but
It was a
yeah.
little dark.